Hi everyone. So in this video, I'm going to go over the General Chemistry 2 Lab Practical Outline. You can find all of this information on Brightspace in written form, but I wanted to give it to you in video form as well, so you had a second way to find it. Okay, so how's the lab workflow work? Well, first there's a pre-lab before you have the lab. It's about 5 questions worth 5 points. It's similar to what you're going to be doing in the lab. However, there are different concentrations, chemicals, volumes, etc. So it's just an example of a similar type of calculation. So remember that you actually have to make the solution. So if you do on the lab practical and you calculate you need 0.504 grams in 100 milliliters of solution, think about how am I actually going to make that solution so that it's made properly. And if you're not sure how to do that, please come and ask us, and we are very happy to help. Come to homework help or office hours, all listed on Brightspace, and we're happy to talk you through it as you're doing it. So the lab practical is it's 2 tasks really, and only the tasks are provided. There's no step-by-step instructions for the task, so it's not going to tell you step-by-step how to do it. You have to do the calculation and then figure out how to do it step by step. The example calculations in the pre-lab can help you with that. However, it's also important that you think about how to actually do it. So it's really just 2 tasks. The first is making a solution from a solid, and the second one is a titration, which also involves a dilution. So basically you have to dilute something and then titrate it. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the administration of this and the grades. So first is a pre-lab on Brightspace, just like you've done a bunch of times before, except it's only worth 5 points instead of 10. There is no Excel data analysis to do. In fact, you will not use the computers at all in the lab, okay? So there's not going to be any internet connected devices in the lab. No cell phones, no computers, no nothing. This is administered like a test. So in lab, it's 10 points per task, and like I said, there's really only 2 tasks, okay? Because the dilution and the titration are one task, okay? So first things first, work safely. If you're occasionally taking your goggles off in the lab, this is not the week to do that because you will get a 0 for the lab. And no uncertain terms. Part of working in a chemistry lab correctly is working in a chemistry lab safely. If you're working unsafely, you will get no credit for this lab, and to be honest with you, you deserve no credit for this lab. It's the end of General Chemistry 2. We've told you a million times to work safely. Now's the time to prove that you can do that. Please be aware that I was at a local company, industrial chemistry type company, recently, and there they have a zero tolerance policy. If people are not wearing their safety gear, they get fired. You walk through the lab, every single person is wearing their safety gear, and I bet they've in the total years they've been in operation, never fired anybody because people just accept it. That's the way that it is, and that's how people behave. You have to behave that way in the lab next week. If you're not behaving in the way that way in the lab next week, you will be given a 0, no second chances. Even if you're hot or whatever the case may be, you got to keep your goggles on. If you want to take them off, please go into the hall. No more to say about that. You need to work individually. You're not going to get any help from the TA. You're not talking to your friends. This is administered like a test. So you're not going to talk during a test. You're not going to talk during the lab practical. It's exactly the same thing. As I mentioned before, there's no procedure provided. Only the lab tasks are provided to you. So basically, you're not going to be getting a step-by-step procedure, just something to do. You're going to do some calculations on that something, and then you will get some then you'll actually do those things. All right, no internet connected devices. Please bring a calculator. We do not have extra calculators, or we don't have a lot of extra calculators anyway. You have to bring a calculator. No cell phones, no internet connected devices. Show your work. No credit will be given if work isn't shown. You can't just mix 2 things together and hand it in. That's not going to work. And there is a strict 90-minute time limit, no exceptions. Okay, as you'll see on the next coming up here, the schedule. Okay, so here is the schedule. So the lab start time, and basically you don't want to be late, because if you're late you're going to run into your time. So basically, if you have Monday afternoon at 2:40, if your last name starts with A through L, you're going to come at 2:40. If your last name starts with M to Z, you're going to come at 4:10. So note that these are last names, not first names. All right, if you have lab on Tuesday afternoon, let me do Tuesday evening. If you have A to L last name, you're going to start at 6. If you have M to Z, you're going to start at 7:30. So basically, if you start at 6, there's going to be another group there at 7:30. You have to be done at 7:30. There will be no extra time awarded for that. Okay, so how about getting help? Well, getting help involves doing the pre-lab questions and making sure you not only know how to do the math, but also that you know how to actually make a solution once you've done the math. Okay, that's really, really important. Or you need to know how to actually do the titration practically. What goes in the burette, what goes in the flask, stuff like that. The pre-lab questions are more math-based to get you practicing the math, but think about the things you've done in the lab and how you're actually going to practically do that. I know you can do it, you just need to think about it because you've done it before. All right, there is a lab practical study guide available on Brightspace, which goes over a few more examples of similar questions. There's homework help and office hours. We're happy to talk you through it vaguely. So we're not going to give you the specifics of what you're doing in the lab, but we will talk about it vaguely in terms of the example questions that you're provided. And just be aware you'll not be able to get help during the lab. So couple things to review. First of all, safety. You have to be working safely. You're not working safely, you don't get a credit, and frankly, you don't deserve it. Second thing is if you're going to do the lab task, you have to be familiar with the calculations before you come to lab. You must show your work in the calculations. They must be neat. They must be understandable. We will give you space to write those out. Next thing, you need to bring a calculator. You absolutely must have a calculator. You cannot use a cell phone. You can't use a computer. I know you're not used to using a calculator during the lab, but you have to use a calculator during this lab. So make sure you bring a calculator. Okay. Then the last thing is you know how to do these things. You've done all of the things that we're asking you to do multiple times. So now's your chance to show us that what you've learned in the general chemistry lab and that you can make solutions, do titrations, make dilutions, and all that kind of stuff. And we look forward to seeing that you guys have mastered how to do these things. Don't forget to work safely. All right, thanks for watching the video. I appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week.